If you're watching this in 2026, I need you to pause for a moment and really listen, because what I'm about to explain could make a meaningful difference in your financial situation over the next few months. There's a lot of noise online right now, a lot of claims, headlines, and videos promising money or benefits, and it's not always easy to tell what's real and what's exaggerated. So let's slow this down and walk through it carefully in plain language so you can clearly understand what's actually happening, what might apply to you, and what you should realistically do next. Recently, there has been widespread discussion about a new groceries benefit in Canada that is expected to be delivered sometime in 2026, possibly around July. The idea behind this type of payment is not new. You might remember that a similar grocery rebate was issued back in 2023, designed to help Canadians cope with rising food prices. That earlier payment reached millions of people and was based largely on income levels and existing tax data. Because it worked as a targeted relief measure, there's speculation and expectation that a similar approach could be used again. Now, here's where it's important to stay grounded. As of now, whenever you hear claims about exact payment amounts, strict deadlines, or guaranteed eligibility, you should treat those claims with caution unless they are clearly confirmed by official government sources. Governments do introduce support programs, especially during times of economic pressure, but the details, such as eligibility thresholds, payment sizes, and timelines, are always finalized and communicated through official announcements, not just through viral videos or secondhand summaries. That said, the general concept being discussed makes sense. Food prices have remained elevated compared to pre-pandemic levels, and many households, especially those on fixed incomes, continue to feel that pressure. Seniors, retirees, and low to modest income individuals are often the most affected because their income doesn't easily adjust with inflation. So if a groceries benefit is introduced or confirmed in a federal budget, it would likely be designed to support exactly those groups. Let's talk about how these kinds of benefits typically work, because understanding the system is more valuable than memorizing any one claim. In Canada, most direct payments like this are administered through the tax system. That means your eligibility is usually determined based on your most recent filed tax return. The government uses that information to assess your income, household situation, and qualification for various credits or supplements. If you're already receiving things like the GST, HST Credit, or income-tested benefits, then you're already in the system they use to deliver additional payments. This is why filing your taxes is so important, even if you have little or no income. A lot of people assume that if they didn't earn much, they don't need to file, but in reality, filing your return is often the key that unlocks access to benefits. Without that information on file, the government simply doesn't have what it needs to determine whether you qualify for anything. Now, about the deadline that's being mentioned, April 30th, 2026, that part is actually grounded in something real. For most Canadians, April 30 is the standard tax filing deadline. When governments introduce benefits tied to tax data, they often use returns filed by that deadline to determine eligibility for upcoming payments. So while it may not be accurate to say you are permanently locked out if you miss that date, it is true that filing on time can affect whether you are included in the first round of payments. If you file after the deadline, you may still receive the benefit later, depending on how the program is structured, but you could experience delays. That's why it's always a good idea to file as early as possible, especially if you're expecting or hoping for any kind of government support. Let's talk about potential payment amounts, because that's another area where expectations need to be managed. When people mention numbers like a few $100s for individuals or over $1,000 for couples, they are often basing that on previous programs like the 2023 grocery rebate. Those numbers can give a rough idea of what might be possible, but they are not guarantees. Any new benefit would come with its own structure, and the exact amounts would depend on income levels, household size, and policy decisions made at the time. For example, in past programs, lower income individuals received higher payments relative to those with moderate incomes, and couples or families with children received more than single individuals. Seniors receiving income-tested supplements were often among those who qualified for higher amounts. If a similar model is used again, you could expect something along those lines, but again, nothing should be taken as confirmed until it's officially announced. Another important point is how the payment would actually reach you. In most cases, if you are eligible, you don't need to apply separately. The payment is issued automatically based on your tax information. That's why keeping your details up to date is so important. Your address, marital status, and especially your direct deposit information all need to be accurate. If your banking information is outdated, you could face delays or complications receiving your payment. Direct deposit is by far the fastest and most reliable way to receive any government payment. If you're still receiving checks by by mail, it might be worth taking a few minutes to set up direct deposit. It reduces waiting time and eliminates the risk of lost or delayed mail. Now let's shift to something practical. Instead of focusing on what might happen, let's focus on what you can actually control right now. The first and most important step is making sure your 2025 tax return is filed. If you haven't done that yet, that should be your priority. It doesn't have to be complicated. There are free and simple ways to file, and if your situation is straightforward, it can often be done in less than an hour. The second step is checking your account information. If you have access to your online tax account, take a few minutes to log in and review your details. Make sure everything is current and accurate. If you don't have access, consider setting it up or asking a trusted family member or advisor to help you. The third step is staying informed, but from reliable sources. It's easy to get caught up in videos or posts that create urgency or fear of missing out. But the best information will always come directly from official government announcements or reputable news sources. When something is confirmed, it will be clearly communicated and you won't need to rely on speculation. It's also worth mentioning that you don't need to panic. Even if a benefit is introduced with a certain timeline, there are usually processes in place for people who file late or need corrections. It's always better to act sooner rather than later, but missing a single date doesn't necessarily mean you lose everything permanently. Let's talk for a moment about why these kinds of benefits matter. For many people, a few $100s might not seem like a huge amount, but for others it can make a real difference. It can cover groceries for several weeks, help with utility bills, or provide some breathing room in a tight budget. For seniors on fixed incomes especially, even a modest payment can ease financial stress. That's why it's important to approach this with both awareness and realism. Yes, there may be support coming. Yes, there are steps you can take to make sure you're in the best position to receive it. But it's equally important not to rely on unconfirmed promises or assume specific amounts until they are officially announced. If you're helping a parent, grandparent, or someone else who may not be as comfortable with technology or navigating these systems, this is a good time to check in with them. Make sure their taxes are filed, their information is up to date, and they understand what's happening. Sometimes just a little assistance can ensure they don't miss out on something they're entitled to. At the end of the day, the key takeaway is simple. Stay informed, stay organized, and take care of the basics. File your taxes, keep your information current, and rely on verified information. If a groceries benefit is confirmed, those steps will put you in the best possible position to receive it without stress or delays. And one more thing, be careful of anything that pressures you to act immediately out of fear, especially if it asks for personal information or directs you to unofficial websites. Government benefits do not require you to rush into risky actions or share sensitive details through unknown channels. When in doubt, always go directly to official platforms or contact authorized support services. So take a moment today to check where you stand. Have you filed your taxes? Is your information up to date? If yes, you're already in a strong position. If not, now is a good time to take action, not because of panic, but because it's simply the smart thing to do. Whatever happens with this potential benefit, being prepared will always work in your favor.